All right, so for letter A, this is actually the graph of this function right here. Oops, it's supposed to be absolute value of x. In Algebra 1, you probably just graphed lines nonstop. Some of them went uphill, some went downhill, some went up and down, some went left to right. Algebra 1 is a study of linear or lines, linear equations or lines. Algebra 2 is the study of pretty much everything else. So some of our graphs make V's, some of them make like these like sideways arcs, some of them make like smiley faces and frowny faces. So we'll learn about that a little bit later. For right now, I just want you to look at this and tell me the domain range. All right, but this is what absolute value of x looks like. It actually makes a V. So your domain, you want to look for a left endpoint, but you can see there's an arrow that points outwards, right? Not only is it going up, it's also going outwards. So we have no left endpoint. And it's the same thing on the other side. We're going outwards more and more and more, so there is no right endpoint. So your domain is all reals or negative infinity to infinity. Now for range, again, you're looking for lowest point and you're looking for the highest point. So we definitely have a lowest point. It's right here. And if I said, how low does it go? I would hope that you would tell me 0. It doesn't dip down below 0. But the highest point, well, it goes up forever. We don't have a highest point. So your range is 0 to infinity. All right, letter B, I want you to do me a favor. There is implied an endpoint right here and an arrow right here. This is actually a square root function. So if you were to graph square root of x on a table or on a calculator, this is the picture you would get from that. So if you look, if I say, what's the left endpoint? Where is it? It would be right here, right? It doesn't go further than that on the left side. There is no point to the left of that. That's as far as it goes. So that would be at 0. But we have an arrow that points to the right. So there is no right endpoint. We just write infinity. Height-wise speaking, we look for the lowest point, which is still here. It's the endpoint. So that has a height of 0. But you notice this is gradually getting taller. So even though the arrow points this way, it's still kind of moving in a diagonal fashion. So we're going to go up and up and up and up and up forever. There is no highest point on here. Now for C, again, ask yourself, what's the left endpoint? We don't have one. It goes left forever. And it's the same thing with the right side. It goes right forever, so negative infinity to infinity. The range is interesting. Range is supposed to be lowest point and highest point. But the lowest point is at 1, but that's also the highest point. It doesn't go up or down at all. So my range is just 1. There is no other number in the range. It doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, it just stays 1 high for the rest of the problem. All right, do a couple more here. Now letter D, when you see these curved graphs, chances are there's an asymptote here. So it's implied that there's an asymptote. Again, even though it looks like this curve will hit the purple line, it does not. It gets closer and closer. If we zoomed in on this, you would see a little bit of a gap between them. All right, so in terms of domain, there is no end. It goes left forever, and even though it's going up, it is moving outwards forever, so it will gradually keep moving to the right. There is no left endpoint, and there is no right endpoint. The range is interesting. So hopefully we agree, well, it's pointing upwards. There is no highest point. So the highest point would be, I guess we have to say infinity. But the lowest point looks like it will be over here. It's getting closer to this line, but never actually touching it. So this will never go below 0, but it won't touch it either. Right? Your asymptote passes through 0. That means that your curve will never hit 0. It'll get closer to it, but not actually touch it. All right, letter E is the graph of x cubed. X cubed makes this picture. All right. Notice how the arrows point diagonal down and diagonal up. So we do not have a left endpoint, And we don't have a right endpoint. We do not have a lowest point, and we do not have a highest point. So it's just all reals all around. Same thing with F. There is no left endpoint and there is no right endpoint. It just goes forever. And there is no lowest point, there is no highest point. So if it's moving diagonal, it's going to be infinities all around. What I'd like to do is maybe go through a couple of these, give you a shot with one of them, and then maybe have you do some by yourself. Okay, so we'll do number 1 together, and then I think we'll do number 3 together. I definitely want to do number 4 and number 5 together. So let's start with domain. Again, we just want left endpoint and right endpoint. So if you look right here, there's an arrow that points to the left. So there is no left endpoint. But on the right end, you can see it stops right here. That is at 5. So my domain ends at 5. It has a solid dot at 5. And I did not have to pick my pencil up to trace it, so I can leave my answer just like that. Now range is lowest and highest. So again, we have an arrow that points diagonal and down. So it gets lower every time. It's going to keep going down forever. But we do have a highest point right here, and that highest point is at 2. Okay, so again, solid dot means bracket. All right, number 3, domain. Look at the left side. You can see there's an endpoint right here. Looks like that's at -4. But on the right side, see I have an arrow that points to the right. That means it's going to go on towards infinity forever. Now we have an open dot at -4, so we are not going to use a bracket, we're going to use a parenthesis. Now for your range, you want the lowest dot and the highest dot. Well, the lowest dot is still right here. So that looks like it is at -1. -1 is as low as it goes. However, it moves up and out forever, so we don't have a highest point. It's going to gradually get taller. All right, number 4, that messes some kids up. It is not a function, but that's okay. You can still do domain and range. So again, we just want the left endpoint, which would be here. Right? We don't want to take this because it does go past that on the left. You want the most left endpoint you can go, as far left as you can go. It's right there. And the right endpoint, so this is the furthest to the right it goes. So we have it going left forever, but it does not pass 3. Now there's no open circle at 3, so I have to assume that it's a bracket. Now height-wise, we're definitely going to use this because that is the lowest point on the graph, but we do not have a highest point because you can see this arrow is pointing upwards and left. So the lowest point, the lowest it goes is -2, but it does not ever stop getting taller. So it goes up and up and up forever. All right, last but not least, domain means left endpoint, which is right here. Your range means right endpoint, which is here. Or excuse me. And then you want your right endpoint, which is here, and we'll get to range in a minute. All right, so we are at -4 for the left endpoint. We are at 3 for the right endpoint. We want a bracket on 3, but we want a parenthesis on -4 because of the open dot. Now for range, we want the highest point, which is right here, and we want the lowest point, which is right here. So my range will go as low as -5, and the highest it goes is 2. We have a solid dot at 2, but we have an open dot at -5. So if you want to go ahead, pause the video and just try numbers 2 and 6 and see how that goes for you. All right, take a look at number 2. So from left to right, it starts at -5 and it ends at -2. Height-wise, it looks like the lowest is -4 and the highest is 4. Number 6, the left point is at -4. We do not have a right endpoint. The lowest height is 0. The highest point doesn't exist. Go ahead and pause the video and let's see if you can do 7 through 9. See if we're building those skills a little bit. All right, go ahead and let's check how you did. So the left endpoint and the right endpoint are pretty obvious. Your lowest point and your highest point, that's why I like to mark these with stars, because these are what's going to tell me my range. Same thing here, your lowest point is -3. You do not have a highest point. It does not go past 0 on the x-axis, so that's your right endpoint, but you don't have a left endpoint. And then number 9, that's a little tricky because sometimes kids think, well, Mrs. Stoltz, aren't there asymptotes right here? I'm just going to tell you, because my knowledge, it does look like that in the picture, so I'll make sure that when I make the picture myself, that it doesn't look like that. But I'm just going to let you know, if you have like a sideways curve like that, it is going to go gradually up and down forever. So if we made this longer, it will eventually pass that line. Okay, it's the graphs that look like this, or the ones that look like this, that have asymptotes typically. Okay, so it does not stop moving left or right, but it does gradually go lower and higher as well. So yeah, that one's a little confusing there. All right, so now it's time for these fun functions, right? We definitely have to lift our pencil, so expect a U for this. We have to break contact with the paper. There is no left endpoint, so you might as well just set this up as such. We're going to have a number right here. You're going to need a U because you have to break contact. You're going to start with another number, and then there is no right endpoint. There's an arrow that points to the right. So we're going to start the story with -infinity and end the story with +infinity. All you have to do, and I'll switch colors here so it's a little easier to see, is see where the break occurred. Now we're dealing with x values, so we want to look for x numbers here. So it's right here at this line. This is where my domain broke. So that goes through 2. So 2 is what goes here. Now the range is going to be the other break. So again, it's going to be the same setup. There is no lowest point and there is no highest point. All right. So it goes down forever. It does get higher as we go on, but eventually we hop over this line right here, this asymptote. The height of that asymptote is 1. So this goes through 1 on the y-axis. So we're going to hop over 1 when we're doing our range. All right, we'll do it again. So your domain does not have a left endpoint. It does have a break. We'll resume right after that break, and it does not have a right endpoint. The matter is, where does the break occur? So again, we use x values, or where our vertical asymptote crosses through, and it crosses through -1. Range is going to be the same setup. There is no lowest, we have a break, there is no highest point. So when you look at your horizontal asymptote, 1, 2, 3, that goes through -3 on the y-axis. So we have a break at -3. All right, we'll do one more here. So this one, again, you're going to set up like we've been setting up. Might as well set up for the range as well because they're going to be the same. All right, so in terms of my domain, it breaks wherever the x value is that has a dashed line through it, so that would be at -2. My y value would break at +2. So that's what goes in those blanks for your range. All right, so we have 3 more. Again, we have an endpoint and an arrow. So your domain is going to start somewhere and end with an infinity. Your range is going to do the same thing. So you're going to have a lowest point, but you are going to have an arrow, so you're not going to have another endpoint there. All right, so the left endpoint is at -2. There is no right endpoint. If I do my domain over here, My right endpoint is at 1. I do not have a left endpoint. For this one, my my right endpoint is at -1, but I do not have a left endpoint. It goes left forever. For your heights, your lowest point is 0, but it goes up forever. For this one, your lowest point is right here at -2, but you see how the arrow goes downwards? It goes down forever. For the last one, your lowest height is 2, but it goes up forever, so back to positive infinity. Okay. So that's kind of your overview into domain and range. Like I said, it's going to take some practice to get really good at that, but the more you do it, the easier it does become. So just hang in there. I promise it will get easier.